So the main part of this talk is talking about the effect of food on kidneys. This includes plants as well. And before we get into that, I wanted to give a little background on the main concern folks have with this area, which is protein. Protein is very important. Too much protein in kidney disease may cause problems. And I will now go into that evidence. So first, I want to talk about protein consumption by dietary type. So first, those who self-classify themselves as vegans taking about 82 grams of protein per day. Those who are vegetarian taking about 93 grams of protein per day. And those who are omnivores taking about 112 grams of protein per day. So as you eat less plant-based, you do take in more protein. It's not necessary that you take in that extra protein, but what happens is that with the kidney is that the GFR, which is the function of the kidney, increases as you take in more protein. That could be interpreted as a good thing. However, this increase is not reflective that the kidney is healthier. In fact, the kidney is just working harder to help excrete some of the breakdown and metabolic products of the protein. So you can see that the GFR, which is roughly correlates to percent kidney function, starts out at 100 for those who are vegan, increases to 105 for vegetarians, and goes up to 113 for omnivores. So as you take in more protein, that GFR number does go up, and it does make the kidney work harder. But the big question is this harmful or harmless for the kidney? And that kind of depends if you already have kidney disease or not. If you do already have kidney disease, it's likely harmful. And let me explain why. So the additional high protein causes this state called hyperfiltration, which means that the kidneys are filtering in a hyperactive state. So they are working harder to filter more. This hyperfiltration is a process of having additional blood flowing through the individual units of the nephron. Remember, you have about 1 million nephrons, and within each nephron is a glomerulus. And in this hyperfiltrating state, you have more blood flow going to each glomerulus. In a damaged kidney, this can cause even more damage. So the way to think of it is like, if you have a knee that is healthy, you may be able to run a marathon. But if your knee is already damaged and you try to run a marathon, you may end up damaging that knee even further. So that's the way to kind of conceptualize it in a very simple way. And this hyperfiltrating process is the underlying mechanism of damage in several common causes of kidney disease. That includes FSGS, diabetes, obesity, and cystic kidney disease like polycystic kidney disease. A big question that I get is, well, if protein in general causes hyperfiltration, what about plant protein? Does that cause less hyperfiltration? And there's actually only one study to answer this. This is from 1990, and it provides valuable insight. And they studied this question. And what they found was that indeed, animal protein does cause more hyperfiltration for the same amount of protein intake, and vegetable protein causes less hyperfiltration compared to animal protein. And if you are to eat protein, which everyone should be eating protein, eating vegetable protein may cause less damage in those with kidney disease. And there are additional benefits to plant protein, which we'll just discuss later in this talk. But this is one of several reasons to consider plant protein in kidney disease. Unfortunately, it was a small study for only 3 weeks, but it still is informative and still guides some recommendations to this day. Then the question is, does animal protein increase the risk of kidney disease if you don't have kidney disease? And there are a few studies, some observational studies, that show that the consumption of animal protein is associated with an increased risk of developing kidney disease, developing kidney failure, and also developing protein in the urine. So these are observational studies, and these studies have shown similar findings in those with kidney disease as well, meaning that if you have kidney disease and you eat animal protein, there have been studies suggesting that animal protein is harmful and may cause further damage. And in one study, replacing 3% of energy from animal protein with vegetable protein lowered the prevalence ratio for the association with renal function impairment to 0.20. This was an 80% reduction in risk. This is on the higher end of risk reduction, and this was from an observational study, so it should be taken with a grain of salt, but it's suggestive perhaps that there is something more to these foods. So why might animal protein be detrimental to kidney function? There's a lot of reasons. Some of the reasons include this hyperfiltrating state that we talked about, the renal acid load or the acid content of these foods. Many animal foods are acidic in nature. It could be related to the microbiome and the fiber involved, and TMAO, which results in inflammation, the sodium content, oxidative stress, and the lack of phytonutrients. So all of these things may come into play to affect kidney disease. Are all plant foods the same? Most definitely not. And we talked about this earlier. What is an example of a healthy plant-based diet and an unhealthy plant-based diet? And this has actually been studied. So this was a study involving almost 15,000 adults who were followed for 24 years to see if they developed kidney disease. Eating a healthy plant-based diet was associated with a 15% lower hazard ratio of developing kidney disease, whereas eating an unhealthy plant-based diet was associated with a higher risk of developing kidney disease. So what do they define as being healthy and unhealthy? So healthy and plant-based included fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, tea, and coffee. And that's similar to what we described earlier. Unhealthy and not plant-based included refined grains, potatoes, and in this study, potatoes were lumped as unhealthy, which I disagree with. But the reason for being lumped into the unhealthy category is because many folks eat potatoes in the fried form, such as chips, French fries, things like that, which is not so healthy. But potatoes can be healthy and are healthy in their unfried form. If they're in a stew or if they're baked, potatoes can be very healthy and very filling. Other examples of unhealthy and or not plant-based food options included fruit juices, sugar and artificially sweetened beverages, sweets and desserts, animal fat, dairy, meat, fish or seafood, which in this study was classified as being unhealthy and not plant-based. But fish and seafood can be a great food. In some studies, it's been shown to be supportive of health. In other studies, it's been shown to be not supportive of health. And finally, eggs were classified as being unhealthy and not plant-based. A recent meta-analysis came out last year, and this meta-analysis looked at various food options and whether they were associated with the lower odds of developing kidney disease. And indeed, vegetables are associated with this. Some vegetables have historically been avoided in kidney disease for a variety of reasons, which we'll get to later. But as you can see here, many of these studies favor the consumption of vegetables for reducing the odds of developing kidney disease, and the net analysis also showed a significant finding. So going back to this, there are several potential benefits of a plant-based diet in kidney disease, and we talked about how plant-based diets could affect the causes of kidney disease, including diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. We talked a little bit about the progression of kidney disease. And then next, we're going to move on to the complications of kidney disease, which the first one includes hyperphosphatemia, which translates to an increased phosphate level. So phosphate levels rise in advanced kidney disease, and this is a big problem for kidney doctors like myself who want to lower this level to prevent the complications that may occur. Some of the complications that can come from an elevated phosphate level is, unfortunately, mortality, and having an elevated phosphate level is an independent risk factor for mortality. Phosphate restriction is recommended, meaning that we tell our patients to consume less phosphorus, but this is difficult because the phosphate content is not disclosed on nutrition labels. So it's hard to already restrict the consumption of some things like sodium when that is already listed on nutrition labels. So imagine trying to consume less of a micronutrient like phosphate when it's not even disclosed on the nutrition label. So it's almost a little bit like trying to fly in the dark. And because of this, adherence is difficult with this dietary recommendation. Some good news is that even though plant-based proteins actually have more phosphorus than animal-based proteins, this phosphate or phosphorus is mostly bound as phytate, meaning that it is not absorbable. Phytate is a storage form of phosphorus in plants, and because it is bound to phytate, it is not absorbable because humans lack the enzyme phytase. And this has led to the rule of thirds. And I borrowed this from this study that was published 12 years ago. And this study that you can kind of conceptualize the absorption of phosphorus into 3/3, 2/3, or 1/3, hence the name rule of thirds. And animal protein falls into the 2/3 category. So you get about 40 to 60% of phosphorus from animal proteins being absorbed. So this includes milk, yogurt, eggs, cheese, beef, chicken, turkey, and fish. These things are about 40 to 60% absorbed in terms of their phosphorus. So not all the phosphorus is absorbed, but about 40 to 60%. Plant protein or vegetarian protein, and in this example, they use breads, almonds, peanuts, lentils, and chocolate. This comes out to about 10 to 30%. So you have 1/3 and 2/3. What falls into the 3/3 category or 100% is actually your dark sodas, your carbonated cola drinks, and this is 80 to 100%. So many of my patients already know this, but they know not to drink any sort of dark soda because the phosphorus load is substantial and it's pretty much all absorbed. And there's been a few studies on this issue, not too many, so we can kind of go through them. There's an observational study that those on a vegetarian diet were associated with a lower serum phosphorus level. Another observational study showed that those consuming lower amounts of plant protein were associated with higher urinary phosphate excretion, suggesting higher absorption of phosphorus with animal proteins. Another interventional study showed that eating 70% plant protein had lower urinary phosphate excretion. And finally, an interventional study by Mo et al. Showed that those on a vegetarian diet had lower serum phosphorus and lower urinary phosphate excretion. There are a few caveats that were recently published. Not all vegetarian diets are the same, and they can vary in their ratios of milks, eggs, and we talked about the different types of vegetarian diets a little bit earlier. Those variations, especially if you include more animal products, can contribute to a higher absorption of phosphorus. The other thing is that not all plants are grown under the same conditions. So even though in general, we say that plant foods have lower bioavailable phosphorus, the ultimate amount that is absorbed can vary because the plants may have different amounts of phosphorus and phytate depending upon their growing conditions and varieties of within a subtype of a plant. A big factor that affects phosphorus absorption is actually the way these foods are processed. Phosphorus can be added, and there's different levels of processing, and the processing of these plant foods increases the bioavailability of the phosphorus. And this is because there's less phytate binding to the phosphorus. As there's more food processed and this phytate bond becomes disrupted, and these are examples of various types of food processing. You can have milling, dehulling, soaking, germinating, sprouting, canning, autoclaving, yeast leavening, baking, heating, and extrusion. All these things work to destroy that phytate bond and then makes phosphorus or phosphate bioavailable for absorption. And because phosphorus is not disclosed on nutrition labels and exact bioavailability is not known, we have to estimate phosphorus absorption, and this is kind of tricky. However, when you look at studies, it shows that about 51 to 68% of phosphorus is bioavailable in lacto vegetarians, and this is less, somewhat less than their omnivorous counterparts, which ranges between 60 to 75%, and this difference may be larger in those who are totally plant-based. Certainly, we need more research. But in general, less phosphorus is bioavailable / absorbed in whole unprocessed plant foods. And phosphorus and processing of these foods increases phosphorus absorption. And soaking and rinsing may be a good way to reduce phosphorus load. And it's important to note that fruits and vegetables are naturally low in phosphorus. So these foods are good in lowering phosphorus levels.